to turn to a discussion of the judicial branch of government in the state of California. So we'll be talking about the California court system in this video. Now, similar to the federal court system, there are 3 levels within the California state court system. We have the trial courts at the bottom, then the state appellate courts. They are the intermediate appellate courts in the state of California. And finally, the highest court in the state of California is the California State Supreme Court. So we're going to start with the discussion of the California trial courts. So any lawsuit that starts in California state courts begins in the trial courts. Now, trial courts are referred to as superior courts, and they sit in each of the 58 counties in our state. Superior courts hear both criminal and civil matters, including probate and juvenile cases. California's 58 superior courts have facilities in more than 530 locations with about 1,700 judges. If you just think about those numbers for a second, it's pretty amazing to think about the scope and the scale of the California state court system. It's pretty enormous. Now, Proposition 220 is an interesting proposition that was passed by California voters in 1998, and this proposition amended the state constitution to allow each county's trial judges to unify their courts into a single countywide superior court system. So this change was sort of important and impactful on our state justice system because it was really the process of centralizing all of the municipal courts into the state trial court system or superior court systems. So what this means is that the state of California, instead of counties in California, are now responsible for funding and maintaining the trial courts, or also known as the superior courts, in the state of California. So this is supposed to be a more centralized, streamlined version of the state justice system. The next court in the state of California is the California Courts of Appeal, which is the intermediate level of the court system in California. So the California Courts of Appeal review the decisions of trial courts when a party to a case seeks review. The state legislature has divided the state geographically into 6 appellate districts, and each contains a court of appeal. There are 105 authorized justices apportioned among the 6 districts, which are headquartered in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Sacramento, San Diego, Fresno, and San Jose. If you look to the right of the screen, you'll see the map of the appellate court districts for the state of California. And I realize that the type is a little bit small. It might be hard to read, but if you can check out the map, it might be fun to guess which appellate court district Riverside County falls under. Well, I'll tell you in a second. There'll be a big reveal. So if you want to make a guess, that could be a fun thing to do. Cases in the California Courts of Appeal are decided by a 3-judge panel. Now, this is also the case for the federal appeals courts. You'll never see like a trial with a judge and a jury like you might see on a TV show in a courts of appeal. It's always going to be a panel of judges or justices who are reviewing the case, and it's their decision whether or not to validate or sanction an appeal. The California Supreme Court may review decisions of the Courts of Appeal to settle important questions of law and ensure that the law is applied uniformly in all 6 appellate districts. Now, you might have guessed before from the map that Riverside County falls under the 4th Appellate District for the state court system in California. And because the 4th District is so huge, it is further broken down into 3 different divisions. Now, you could probably guess which division Riverside is located in. That's going to be Division 2. Riverside County is in Division 2, San Bernardino County. But this is such a large district, the 4th District is so large that it had to be divided up into 3 divisions. Now, the 3rd and highest level of the California state court system is the California State Supreme Court. The Supreme Court of California is the court of last resort in the courts of the state of California. It's headquartered in San Francisco. However, they also have sessions that are held in Los Angeles and Sacramento. The Supreme Court of California consists of the Chief Justice and 6 associate justices. Each are nominated or appointed by the Governor of California. So if you've been thinking about some of the similarities and differences between our U.S. Supreme Court and our California State Supreme Court, one of the things you might have noticed is that the California State Supreme Court has a total of 7 justices sitting on the bench, whereas the U.S. Supreme Court has a total of 9 justices sitting on the bench. However, you might also notice a bit of a similarity in the process of appointing or nominating justices. So the president, who is the head of the executive branch for the federal government, is responsible for appointing justices to serve on the Supreme Court. Similarly, the governor of California, who is the head of the executive branch of the state of California, is responsible for appointing the justices to the state Supreme Court. So there's a little bit of a similarity there with the relationship between the executive branch and the judicial branch. Now, another difference comes in this last 4th bullet point. So for the California State Supreme Court, after a justice has served 12 years on the state Supreme Court, they come before the voters. If the majority of voters want that state Supreme Court justice to remain on the court, then they do if they win the majority of votes. However, if after 12 years the majority of voters do not want that state Supreme Court justice to remain on the bench, then they can vote against that person and they will no longer be a California State Supreme Court justice. So you might have noticed that this is a little bit different from how the timeline works for U.S. Supreme Court justices. So U.S. Supreme Court justices, they have a term for life until they retire or resign or die or are impeached, although we have never in the history of the U.S. had a Supreme Court justice be impeached. It is a possibility in the Constitution, but we've never had that happen. It's never been attempted. But essentially, U.S. Supreme Court justices have their position on the bench for life. However, for our California State Supreme Court, they have 12 years on the state Supreme Court, and then they have to come before the voters. And if the voters decide they should continue to be on the court, they will remain there. But if voters do not want them on the court anymore, then they no longer remain on the court. The last court system that we need to know about in California and in the whole country is the tribal justice system. So in California, there are currently 22 tribal courts. The number of tribes with access to a tribal court is 39 because some courts serve multiple tribes. So, for example, the Intertribal Court of Northern California serves 7 tribes simultaneously. The Intertribal Court of Southern California serves 12 tribes simultaneously. And then there are a few other examples here as well. Now, reservations, rancherias, and other federal trust lands in California are known in terms of jurisdiction as Indian country. So, Indian country describes a different legal jurisdictional scheme with primary authority resting with the tribal government and the federal government and more limited state jurisdiction. Now, you might have noticed already in the module section of Canvas, there is a really interesting video that describes some of the differences between the way that justice is conceptualized in a lot of tribal court systems versus the way justice is conceptualized in the state court systems. So if this is a topic that you're interested in, check that out. So this concludes this video for the lecture. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to post them in the discussion section of the module in Canvas, or send me an email or a Canvas message. I'm happy to answer any questions or respond to any comments or thoughts or reactions that you have about this material. So I hope that you have a wonderful day. And again, stay healthy, stay safe, and I look forward to working with you all online. This will be quite an adventure.